Hi folks, and welcome to my review of War Hospital, a strategy game based around managing a World War I field hospital. I actually quite enjoyed this game despite it being absolutely riddled with bugs. Game-breaking, save-corrupting bugs. And it's also not really finished, although it is fully released now, but more on all this later on. The game puts you in charge of a British field hospital just behind the front lines in 1918. As casualties come in from the front, you've got to assign them to an appropriate surgeon for the type of wound they've got, and you're going to have to make some very tough decisions about who gets treatment and who doesn't, because there isn't going to be time to save everyone, unfortunately. From those that you do manage to save, some you can return to the front line to bolster the defences against the next German attack, and others you can send back to HQ, which gives you rewards to spend on upgrading your base and hiring more staff, etc. Or you might need to release them from service if they've been so badly injured, maybe you've had to amputate, or the injuries from a gas attack are so severe they're just not going to be fit for duty. Now, listening to this, you'll probably think that the game does cover quite a sensitive topic with injured servicemen and women, and yes, it does, but I feel like it's actually managed to pull this off reasonably well and is quite respectful. So this isn't a surgeon simulator, you are literally just the manager of the hospital. You assign casualties to a surgeon, you assign nurses to the operating ward, you assign medics to duties like carrying the injured about, and you also assign engineers to duties upgrading the camp and making medical supplies for the operations. As always, I played through this live and you can see my entire playthrough on this channel, and I'll drop some links down below. So, graphics, sound and performance. The visuals in War Hospital are actually quite a mixed bag. The actual town itself, where your hospital is based in, it looks amazing if you zoom in and follow the camera down the streets and around the buildings. There's some great detail there. The problem is, you don't really play the game from this view. You have to be zoomed all the way out to see all the notifications and warnings popping up on the screen over the buildings and the medic teams and the surgeon teams and the areas that your teams work in to see if they're exhausted or not. So you don't really get to appreciate all the nice detail on the building models. Also, the cutscenes, for some reason, look extremely grainy and low resolution compared to the actual town. I don't know if this is by design or whether they're supposed to look like something different, but it doesn't look terribly impressive stuff for cutscenes. Audio-wise, there's not an awful lot to report on in the game. There's a few sound effects like dings and bangs and alarms going off to try and warn you of some event that's happened or something has occurred. It doesn't always do a good job of making you aware of exactly what it was warning you to, but you are aware that something has happened that you need to go and find out about. There's a little bit of voiceover in the game. Some of it's great, some of it is not so great and sounds like it's been recorded by an AI bot told to put on a foreign accent. It is really quite basic stuff. Now, as for performance, whilst I had no issues with frame rates and the game playing smoothly, the game itself is absolutely riddled with bugs. Things like it crashing on various screens. There was an issue where if you opened up one of your characters to award them a perk after they'd leveled up, the game would just freeze and crash, and it was Alt F4 to get out of it. There was issues with the game loading in and you're not being presented with the town but an overlay of the map with your characters moving around and you can't see what the hell's going on. That was Alt F4 to reload the game again. And you had corrupted saves all over the place, sometimes for no good reason. This meant a lot of lost progress. So be aware of this at this time. The game is extremely buggy and quite disappointing from this respect. Alright then, on to my likes and dislikes. What did I enjoy most about War Hospital? Well, the core gameplay loop, whilst it is somewhat repetitive, it's also highly enjoyable and I really did like it. You see, casualties come into the hospital, they get delivered by train, or your medics will bring them directly from the trenches, which are quite nearby. You'll have to triage them to work out who needs to be seen first or who can't be helped at all, assign them to surgeons, hopefully the operation will be successful. Sometimes there are complications in surgery, sometimes it's the opposite and it turns out to be not as bad as you first thought. If it all works, casualty again goes into rehab, the nurses try to get them back to health, which might take a day or two, and then you can assign them back to the front line to fend off the next attack. You can send them to HQ to get rewards for upgrading your base, and that is really one of the good things about the game, the base sort of building, if you like, upgrading your abilities to make everything smoother or easier. Or you might have to dismiss someone from the service altogether, which does boost the morale of the hospital if soldiers are being sent home, although I'm not quite sure being sent home because they've had one of their legs amputated is quite the morale boosting experience that the developers have put in here. But either way, it's a really good gameplay loop. And the game does get very, very tense in times. You see, rarely do casualties come in dribs and drabs where you can manage them a few at a time. They often come in big waves when there's a big assault on the front lines. You'll be overwhelmed with casualties. You'll have some really tough decisions to make, who to treat and who not to treat, and in what order to treat them. Your surgeons will be getting exhausted, your nurses will be worn out, your medics can't cope, and your engineers are always exhausted trying to work round the clock creating medical supplies. And you've got to manage all this, and when it gets really tense and really desperate, if you manage to pull through that and turn that around, it is so rewarding. And so you do feel stressed at times while playing this, but at the same time, you get the reward if you manage to pull it off and make a success of things. So it's actually a really good feeling. And the way the game has put pressure on the player like this, I think is actually quite well done. There's also some very tough choices to make in the game. Not just about patients, about who should be denied treatment and who should go through, but there's lots of other little story events that pop up, and you've got scout teams that you send off on missions, and they can have various different outcomes. So there's some quite good stuff in there to really make you think hard about things. And the other thing that I liked about War Hospital was there's some very cheeky Easter egg VIP names in there. For example, one of the patients I came across was Steve Rogers of Captain America fame. And there was, who else was there? There's quite a few in there that are quite good. These characters often pop up as VIP events. These are patients that come in, but with a letter from your commanding officer or someone high up in the military, saying, you make sure these people survive their treatment and you'll be well looked after, type of thing. And then that adds into more tough decisions. Do you put them in to see the surgeons before maybe someone who is more critically injured? Because these are VIPs. Are they more important? Are you going to toe the line and do as you're told? Or are you going to stick to your ethics and treat those who need treatment more urgently? Again, there's more tough decisions to make around there. But I do like the fact that these are in there. There is a little bit of humour in some of the names. And there's even some real names of, I think there's one British general who actually served in the war, comes through the hospital at one point. So there's all sorts of things that can go wrong with these, but they usually have good outcomes if you can manage them properly. And now, unfortunately, we need to talk about the bad stuff. And I think from the big list I've got here, it can all be summed up quite simply. The game just isn't ready. It's been pushed out too soon, and as a result, there are some features that don't really work as intended. There are some features that are not very well thought out, and the game is just full of bugs, and critical bugs, game-destroying bugs, things that will corrupt your save. Also, that's very important to point out, at the time of release, there is no quick save button, and there is no autosave feature. So you manually have to open up the menu and go in and save the game and select a save file or overwrite an old save every time you want to save it. And with the amount of issues the game has, that is not very good at all. I've heard reports of other people having terrible bugged saves right from the start. In my own, it worked fine for most of the first chapter of the game. And then when I came to upgrade one of my first team members who'd leveled up and got a new perk to select, the game just froze at that screen and I couldn't select a perk, I couldn't come back out of it, I couldn't save the game in it. And I lost a whole hour of progress on the stream, which was partly my fault. I maybe should have saved more often. But give us these features to save faster, quick save buttons or autosave, and we will save and the bugs won't be as much of a problem. But that wasn't the only time I hit that bug. Other times I loaded in what seemed like a perfectly good save after maybe we'd had to go back and do something differently. And when it loaded in, I didn't have a screen where I could control anything. It was overlaid with a loading screen and I saw the medic team stuff moving around, but I couldn't control a damn thing. That was a common one as well. Sometimes that would just corrupt a save. Sometimes I found 2 or 3 saves had been corrupted like that and I had to go back even further. Luckily, by that point in the game, I had learned that this was likely to be an issue and I was saving every 10 minutes. Again, manually, which was a huge problem, or at least a huge pain in the arse to go and do. But we had to do it. Every time we saw a game event pop up, we saved the game before we went into it, knowing that there was a chance something would horribly break afterwards. Another bug that I come across that wasn't fixed in my save, although it was in the patch notes on Steam saying it had been fixed, was that the ambulances don't work. You can spend resources upgrading the hospital to provide them with 2 ambulances, which will bring casualties from the advanced dressing station, which is near the front lines, into the casualty clearing station, which is just before the operating ward. My ambulances just didn't work. They were there on the map, they were parked outside the dressing station, the medics would not load them in. Now, outside of the bugs, there's also things that just don't work or just work very, very poorly. And it's a sign that the game has been rushed out or just hasn't had enough time to bake or hasn't had enough thought put into how these things should work. And one of these is the scout screen. You get this map of the local area showing the hospital and the front lines with various mission markers on that you can send one of your scout teams to, which would generate a little event and a story, which in theory is kind of cool. But the whole concept of this needs some rework. For example, if you mouse over one of the mission markers, a little pop-up appears allowing you to read what the mission text is. However, while you're doing that, the map in the background pans around wherever you've got the mouse, moving the marker from under the mouse so the pop-up disappears and you can no longer read the damn text. So if you want to read the text in this way to decide which mission to do next, you have to hover the mouse over the mission, and while the map is panning away from it, try and match that rate of pan with moving the mouse in the same direction so the pop-up doesn't disappear. If that sounds silly, it's because it is. Also on this screen, you can find depots away from the hospital. A depot is something like I found a monastery where you could send a truck to pick up medical supplies. It sounds like an interesting concept, but it just doesn't work very well because it's not clear whether you have to manually send the truck there and then tell it to come back, or whether you assign the truck to it and it will momentarily fill up with supplies and bring them back and then go back out itself. You can tell it to come back early, but that then cancel the assignment. We don't know how this works. There's nothing to really explain it, and the buttons just don't really help, and you don't know whether it's actually doing anything without your interference. And if you are supposed to manually tell it to go there and then tell it to come back, then that is an extra level of micromanagement which you really don't need. Also on the subject of these trucks, you can upgrade the hospital spending very valuable resources, which are tight in the game, by the way. They take a lot of managing, and if you do upgrade something, it's quite an investment of your resources, which could be used to maybe upgrade something else. And you can upgrade it so you can get more trucks to send to depots on this map. Here's the thing. I finished the game, I only ever found one depot. I would never need more than one truck at any one time, and that only appeared for a bit of Chapter 2. For Chapters 1 and 3, I didn't find any depots. I had nothing to send the trucks to. So why would I ever need to upgrade the place to have more than one truck? It might be the submissions are out there that I just didn't come across, but it looks to me like they had this idea in place for sending trucks out to depots to collect supplies, didn't have time to actually implement any of what they planned before it was released. That's how it feels. It's just very poorly thought out. Now, another thing that I found quite annoying is that all your workers, your medics, your surgeons, your nurses, they all have personality traits. Now, this is a cool thing. Like, some will be lazy and not work very well. Some will be friendly and work with others or give benefits to working with others. Some will have preferences over where they work, and some can pick up traits which make them better in one particular area of work. Like your medics might be better working in the casualty clearing station. They'll give a bonus to efficiency in there. Or your nurses might speed up operations in the operating ward. I like that bit. However, you can only see those perks when you go into your staff roster, and you can't assign your staff any work positions from there. You need to go into the staff assignment screen to assign them where they're working, and from there you can't see what any of their perks and traits are at all. So you need to go into the roster. You need to remember that Joe Bloggs prefers to work in the casualty clearing station but isn't very good at working with others. So then you go into the assignment screen, you find the casualty clearing station and you try and drag Joe Bloggs into it and put him on a shift when he's not working with anyone else. But then you need to go back into the staff assignment screen, the staff roster, to look at the perk for someone else to go and work in all the other things. And when you have a lot of staff, I mean several dozen staff members to look after, trying to do that or remember who likes to work in what or who gives a benefit to where is nigh on impossible. And what they really need from the staff assignment screen, where you can actually assign people jobs, you need to be able to right click on them to bring up their perks to see where they want to go. It'd be as simple as that, but it's not put in, and it makes the whole perk system such a pain in the ass. By the end of the game, I didn't care where anyone worked better, and I just had to assign them where some member of staff was needed. Also, another sign that I think the game was rushed out a bit, when you get a casualty in, you get to see their military records, which has the name, the date of birth, etc., and when they joined the army. And then they've actually decided to add like a little personal note in here as well, like was the best blacksmith in the village and enjoyed making hedge cutters or something stupid like that, which would be cool. But you see these personal notes repeated quite a lot for different soldiers as they come in. So they've obviously got the names of the soldiers in the game, or maybe they're randomly generated, I'm not sure. And then they've obviously got a finite number of these personal records, and they reuse them for lots of different soldiers. And that makes no sense whatsoever. Why even bother putting the personal records in? Because they don't add anything if you're not going to make them personal. Just leave them out. On the soldier's record, we just need to see their name, their date of birth, and maybe when they joined up. We don't need to know the rest of their family history. And this really, really made me laugh, but not in a particularly good way, when we saw one soldier come in. Actually, I can say we saw many soldiers come in with this because it was repeated across several ones. And the personal note said, promised his mum he would be home in time for Christmas 1914, which seems very sort of sentimental because a lot of the soldiers, when they signed up in 1914, did think they would be home in time for Christmas. However, when you see the date he joined the army, it was April 1915. So the personal note had no relevance to the rest of the record, didn't make any sense, and probably shouldn't have been included in the first place. So I'm not quite sure why these were done in the way they were. They would have been better left out. The game would have looked more polished that way. But maybe that'll be fixed. Maybe more will be added. I don't really know. And also the final thing that was a little bit of a letdown is that I found the game ending a little bit underwhelming. I found the end of Chapter 3, when you have a lot of battles coming in a short space of time, you should be overwhelmed with casualties, you should be struggling to end. It's like playing Frostpunk when the big major storm is coming at the end. It wasn't like that. Now, maybe I'd played well in Chapters 1 and 2 and got the whole hospital well prepared and upgraded and the staff leveled up and enough staff members there to deal with it quite well. And maybe I knew what I was doing by this point, but I found the last few days of game time to be a bit of a walkover, and it wasn't difficult at all, and it wasn't stressful at all like it was in the beginning. So maybe the difficulty could be ramped up a little bit for that. Maybe it was just me doing well. I don't know. If anyone else has played, I'd love to hear how you found it at the end and what your thoughts were on it. So overall, I did enjoy War Hospital, and I think it's a great idea for a game. However, I can't recommend it in its current state. I think there's so many bugs that need to be removed, and there's little quality of life things which need to be added in, and a little bit of game fixing. So I think probably 3 to 6 months time, I think this product will be a lot better than it is now, and it'd be worth waiting and playing it then. If you buy it and play it now, you're going to be in for frustrating times. But it is good, and I do like the concept, and I sincerely hope the developers fix the problems and maybe take on board some of the criticisms about the interface and other things, because I liked it enough to want to finish it, but it was trying on my patience at times. And I did think with the corrupt saves there was a point where we had lost all the progress. But we're quite lucky. We'd only lost about an hour. I think was the worst progress loss I had. But even so, yeah, work needs to be done. So if you guys have enjoyed this review, please do like and subscribe, as it massively helps this video reach other viewers, and it helps the channel out a lot. Also, I stream games like this during the week, so do come and join us, and you can check out whichever new games I'm playing at the moment, or maybe some old classics. Thanks folks, and hopefully I'll see you again real soon.